Hello, listeners. Kristen Walker here. Dr. Peter Vermeulen joins us today. He is the keynote speaker of 2020's Converge Autism Conference by Springbrook Autism Behavioral. He's the founder and director of Autism in Context, the chief editor of Stirk in Autism, which is a bi-monthly magazine of Autism Central. Today we cover many topics. Peter is fascinating, but we stay centered around theory of mind. This is one of my all-time favorite guests to date. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. Ooh, I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristen Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised, we'd be cordial.
Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
So where are you calling in? I know you're not calling in, you're using a mic and a speaker, but where are you reaching us from today?
I'm sitting here in Belgium where it's evening and quite hot for the time of the year. It's summer here.
It's summer here too, and we're breaking records with the heat. It's not been fun.
No, well, it's the same over here. I think there's definitely something going wrong with the climate. Yeah.
Yes, but climate change doesn't exist. Wink, wink.
Well, lately it has started to exist.
I believe that it does.
Since this week, there's some concern about the climate.
Yes, as there should be. So tell our listeners, and they heard a little bit about your background, but why is this, this work and your work with autism, your life's work? Or one of the, I'm sure you do many other things, but give our listeners kind of the history.
Of course, I do many other things, but I must say that autism is a little bit like a bug. So actually, I did not choose for autism. My start of my career in autism is rather very plain. I should say. I was looking for a job. I got a phone call from a professor at university and said they're looking for someone at the Parental Society, the National Autistic Society in Flanders, part of Belgium. Mm-hmm. And I applied for the job and I got it, but I had no idea what autism was. So the first day of my training, I had to take care of a boy with autism who was nonverbal. And he didn't understand me, but I didn't understand him. And that was the start of a quest that has never ended. I wanted to understand how autistic people, how they experience the world. And until now, I think I have found some answers to some questions, but who am I to say that I understand autism? I think I understand bits and pieces like most of us.
Right. Right. Exactly. No one knows all of the answers. This is study moving forward. So what's kept you, to stay involved in this field?
Well, what mainly kept me in the field was the observation that although there's a lot of research into autism, a lot of high-tech research nowadays, biological, neurobiological, what I still was looking for is what can we do to give autistic people, just like the rest of people, a good life? Because basically I think that although an autistic brain is running on a different processor, I think the basic needs are exactly the same as for every human being. And until now, I think we still have a long way to go to find the keys to make autistic people thrive in life.
Right, exactly. In terms of how this has affected you personally, was there a family member or a friend?
Um, that's a very strange story. So I got involved in autism, let's say, end of the 80s. I was trained by the people from Teach, North Carolina in 87. But until that moment, I thought, well, autism, that's my profession in life. Until the moment that my brother, who's 7 years younger, he got children. He has four, and two of them have an autism diagnosis. So I'm the uncle also of two grown-ups by now. And then my wife's sister, she was married to a husband who got a very late diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome. So suddenly autism was not just a professional thing anymore. It was also a personal thing and a family thing.
And you found out about this after you started working in the field?
Yes.
That's
And one of the
so
difficult things,
fascinating.
and one of the difficult things was that I was, well, I was reluctant to get involved in the diagnosis of both my nephew, my niece, and my brother-in-law, because I thought I cannot diagnose them. I should not be a professional to them. I should be their brother-in-law or their uncle. On the other hand, of course, the whole family looked at me because they knew I had the knowledge.
Right.
So that was a kind of a difficult balance to find. The balance between being an uncle, but also being an uncle who seems to know something about autism.
It's fascinating how that works, isn't it? As soon as my
Yes.
family found out that I do a show about mental health, all of a sudden I get all the calls,
Yes.
anything mental health related, and I have to remind them, I'm not actually a counselor. You understand that, right?
Yes. And then also, for instance, with my nephew with autism, when he was a small child, I probably did a lot of things that if I was looking at myself as an autism professional, I would have said, Peter, that's not very autism friendly. But on the other hand, I think it's okay to be an uncle who makes mistakes. And that's one of the advices that I give to parents and professionals. Okay, it's very important to become as autism friendly as much as possible. But you know what? You can make mistakes. And one of the things that I noticed in autistic people is that they always forgive you for the mistakes you make.
Let's talk more about that, okay? Because I've noticed that as well. And just give me more context around that statement.
Well, I can give you a very technical explanation that starts with the deficits in episodic memory, which means that autistic people, their memory works different. And rather than a movie where one scene is connected to another one in episodes, like from TV series, their life is more like a photo book. And if you turn the page, it's over and you can start on a new page. That has some negative consequences. For instance, we sometimes see that autistic people sometimes make the same mistake over and over again, as if they don't learn as much as non-autistics from their experiences. But it has a positive side as well, namely that if you, as a parent or a professional, make a mistake and the page is turned because it's the next day, you can start on a new sheet. So nothing is only negative. Everything has a flip side, I think.
That's fascinating. I've noticed that as well. And do you think that it's active forgiveness because they know that this is going on, or this is just a result of how their brain works?
I think it's both, because I've met not many autistic people who really have a negative attitude towards other people, and which is astonishing if you see how much stress they get from social interaction with other people. It's amazing how much they continue to give people around them new chances. So there must be some active forgiveness in there as well.
Some, genetic correlate or brain functioning that maybe neurotypicals don't, have, or at least have in as much abundance.
Yeah.
I think
they're also more straightforward. So they're the ones who will tell you that you do something that is not okay, but the moment you see, okay, this was indeed not okay, they can sometimes they even have the name to be very blunt in their remarks. They don't mean bad. I think they don't know how to wrap it up, their negative feedback. But once they've said it, and you try again and you try differently, you get all the chances you get, so you can make up for it, and then that's real honest.
Yeah.
I don't think they do it to please us, because that would require a lot of theory of mind, which is again something that is, let's say, not the biggest talent of autistic people.
Not a theory of mind. Okay, so let's talk about that in terms of we had a wonderful guest that came on and did a show about how people will be accused of being dangerous or being extremely narcissistic or something like that, and you actually find out that they're autistic. And she did a show about the difference between those two things, and I can see where people make the comparison. Sometimes I've actually made the mistake, a grave mistake, unfortunately, and it's just because I have so much access to the world of autism, obviously through this show and being in the mental health field. But it was interesting. I took someone's very negative behavior in some ways as, okay, well, possibly they're on the spectrum. And I learned the hard way that was a horrible assumption of mine, gone in the wrong direction. And it was nice to, kind of clear those things up, because that ability to be manipulative in a way that someone with narcissism, we're talking when it becomes a personality disorder, that ability to be so manipulative does not seem to be something that someone with autism is as capable of or even capable of doing. Am I correct on that?
You're very correct. It's completely incompatible with how an autistic brain works. Because we do know that autistic people find it very hard to find out what other people think and feel and want. And in order to be manipulative, you need to know that, so that you can find the weak spot in another person's personality or another person's wishes and thoughts. But this theory of mind thing works two ways. What you just told me is proof of your lack of theory of mind for the autistic mind before you had knowledge about autism.
Right.
So we're often complaining about autistic people lacking theory of the neurotypical mind, but I think a lot of neurotypicals lack a lot of autistic mind, theory of autistic mind.
Absolutely.
So the misunderstandings work both ways. And when we say, or when we assume that autistic people are manipulative or narcissistic, that's clearly a proof of a lack of theory of autistic mind to me.
Absolutely.
However, it can be, but that's the difference between narcissistic and egocentric. What we often see is that, and maybe we'll talk about it later, my concept of context blindness, is that because autistic people sometimes are blind for a context, they can be blind for the effects of their behavior on another person. But this is just a matter of not knowing. The moment they know what the effects of their behavior are, they're the first ones to apologize and to even say, well, I'm so very sorry, I did not know this was having this effect on you. So that's hardly narcissistic, is it?
Right, exactly. And actually getting a narcissist to apologize is like getting a
Yes.
lion to not go after deer.
And that's also true for what you also often hear, and more in your country than in ours here, is the link between psychopaths and autism, and crimes and autism. Again, I think this requires so much theory of mind that autistic people lack, and it's a big misunderstanding that autistic people lack empathy.
Yes.
There's two aspects of empathy. There's a cognitive aspect, and that's knowing what another person feels and thinks and so on. But there's also the affective component, and that means when you feel sad, I feel a little bit sad as well. And based on research, we know that there is no issue whatsoever with the affective empathy in autism. That means that if a person with autism knows you're not feeling well, they kind of resonate with that, and they feel sorry about that, and they won't have joy if you feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference between a psychopath and autistic people. The difference is that a psychopath has perfect cognitive empathy. He or she knows what other people feel, but they don't care about it.
Right.
While autistic people often don't know, but the moment they know, they care about it.
Absolutely. I think too, the ability to be excited about things is amazing as well. And it's genuine excitement. Whereas
it's often, and that's the one thing, if you ask me what kept you in the field, one of the things that kept me in the field is the authenticity of autistic people.
Yes, and that you don't get with a narcissist. It was fascinating to me when I started to put the pieces together, and it was things I learned obviously from knowing more about autism. But what I picked up on was this particular person would say things like, "Well, I was plotting the whole time. Every time that I'm with you, I'm plotting on how I can get you to do what I want, which is to make them a star." Since I host multiple radio shows, and that was the first clue into, you know what, my good friends that are autistic, they don't plot, they don't have the ability to do that. And that's when I went, okay, this person is not on the spectrum in any way. So it was fascinating. And you're right about that. Psychopaths know exactly what they're doing. That's part of what they get joy about. For them, that's joy, causing others pain. Someone with autism does not take joy in causing other people pain.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Do you think it's because of just the way that the brain works with someone with autism, that those particular neurons won't fire in that way where they would, or whatever it is? I'm not a scientist, so you'll have to correct me, but they just aren't capable of going off in those directions because of the autism?
Yes, I think so. All the things that we have framed as deficits in the autistic brain, again, we can frame the same things also in a more positive way. So you could say sometimes they lack theory of mind. Well, you could also say they are more genuine, because they do not, that's what we sometimes see, that most of us neurotypicals, the moment we close our front door behind us, we start playing a play in front of a public. We constantly think about, what do other people think about us?
Persona.
So in that way, why did we develop such a cognitive ability as theory of mind? Not because we were interested in what other people think and feel, because we are interested in how other people feel about us and what other people think about us. So actually, the whole area of social skills started from a very egocentric concern, namely, what do other people think about me? I want other people to be positive about me. And that's what sometimes, autistic people, they just do what they do, and they sometimes miss this audience. You can call that a deficit. On the other hand, they are more genuine than most people.
I'll tell you, my friends that are autistic, I I call them when I want an honest answer about something.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so nice because they don't say something. Well, of course, some have learned the social skills and they know it's important to please other people. So there are some learned skills as well. But indeed, when autistic people, when they give feedback to me, they are very straightforward in their comments. And sometimes I feel a little bit hurt, but I know it's not their intention to hurt me. They are just being very honest. And neurotypicals are not very good at coping with honest comments. But at least I know what I need to know. Because other people will kind of be nice to me and don't say what they actually think.
Oh my gosh, I had this happen recently where we were doing some work on film, and we just started doing that. We do webcasts and things like that, and I knew things were not going well. I just knew they weren't going well, but I couldn't get anybody behind, a part of the crew to be honest and tell me what's not going well. What do we need to change? What should be done differently? It was utterly fascinating. So I took some of the footage that we could get our hands on, and I sent it to two friends that are autistic. And I said, okay, will you please? And one of them, he got his PhD at 23. So, this is, and he'll tell me, yeah, you've gotten kind of fat. He just flat out tells me you've gained weight, and I'm like, and it's to really like, but now I go, okay, it doesn't bother me at all. I know he's not doing it to be mean, and he's right.
No.
If he says it, it's because I have. So it's funny. But I had them watch this footage, and it was fascinating, and listen to some shows because I have them listen to shows too, and I'll tell them, please give me your feedback. I don't even have to say, tell me the truth. I don't have to say that where I do with other people. They said, well, this is wrong. This person looks tired. This looks rushed. You look exhausted. How many things were you doing in one day? Kristen, that's a lot to do in one day, don't you think? And especially considering the topics you talk about. I mean, they gave me such great feedback, and I went, thank you. That's what I needed. That's what and so they're my go-to people every time when it comes to certain things. Now, other things, if I go to them, they look at me like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And that's when I have to go to other places.
Yeah. That reminds me, we have I work both for Autism Central and Autism in Context. The last one is my own company, but at Autism Central, we do activities and courses for adults. And one of our courses that we have is about lying. And autistic people, they don't understand why people lie. They say, what's the use?
Yeah.
And then we say, well, there's also something like white lies. You don't want to offend someone. And they say, but why don't you tell the truth? It's the most honest thing. And they seem to have, they say we can lie if some of us can. But we don't see the point of it. If you're gained weight, well, you gained weight. Why ignore it? You better know it.
Right. He wasn't even saying it with judgment. He was just saying, no, you've gained weight.
No, it's not a judgment.
No,
autistic people, they don't judge that easily. What they do is they describe what they see and hear. So they are actually reporting rather than judging.
Exactly. That's why I feel so safe. I just interviewed a young woman who, her name is Madonna, and she does all of these incredible things. She's been on this show. She works in a museum. She writes incredible poetry and satire and so on. She's fantastic. And I love conversations with her as well. But one of the things she described is she does have some, more ability to understand a social construct. I'd say she's high functioning autism, and it's so exhausting. We talked about that on a show. It's so exhausting for her to have to do that. And when she's with me and other people like me that understand this, that aren't autistic, she can relax more because she knows we're not expecting that of her. But in the general public, it's so exhausting to have to fit into all of that social context that's quote unquote acceptable.
And all these social rules that don't make sense to people who have autism.
Right. Smile at
but
something.
Of course, who make sense, but make sense from a neurotypical point of view.
Right. The one thing that I thought was interesting was, well, if someone says something very rude that anyone would think is rude, unless they're, they can't hear and they can't see, but someone with autism would more likely, they're not going to smile about that. They're not going to smile about something because it doesn't require a smile, where a neurotypical would put the face on that we do because we've learned, so it's a lying without words. I don't know. I'm making up some horrible statement that we'll edit out here, but anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yes, I recognize it.
So that understands why you'd stay in the field for so long. It's got to be utterly fascinating to see how this plays out. What have you seen in terms of developments, especially, being not in America? There's different context, different social constructs based on the European way of life as opposed to America. What have you kind of seen in terms of the acceptance of that kind of a diagnosis and understanding in society and with police departments and things like that?
Well, I think we there's a big difference now compared to the 80s when I started. I think there is overall quite a lot of autism awareness in society. I think there's also, in general, a more positive attitude than let's say 30 years ago. However, a lot of things are still on the level of lip service, I think. That means people talk in a more positive way about autism. It's even like fashionable nowadays to talk about autistic strengths and autistic talents. But yet, if I look at, for instance, the number of adults on the spectrum who have a job, then I'm still shocked to see that so few of them do have a job. So as a society, I think we are now at the point where we have to put the words, we have to put them into deeds now.
Right.
Because there's autism awareness. There's even, I must say, if you ask people in the street, what do you know about autism? I think the description will technically be not perfect, but at least it will be a good one. Also because, well, nowadays almost everybody knows someone with autism. Right. So in that way, the knowledge is widespread. But yet, as a society, and I can only speak for Europe here, for the different countries, we still not succeed in translating that knowledge into strategies to make autistic people thrive. Right. For instance, when it comes to inclusion in education, there's now in September the next Autism Europe conference, and I run a session on inclusion. There's still so many kids with autism who are going to special schools, and in one way I understand that because the knowledge is there, the strategies are there, but I think, why do we have to send them to special schools? Maybe for a minority that will always be necessary, but I think more children with autism would benefit from mainstream and from inclusion. So it's a bit strange that we send autistic children to special schools to teach them social skills. And what do they learn there in the social skills training? They learn to socialize with other autistic children, which is okay.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they are able to cope with neurotypical peers.
Exactly. And it reduces the benefit to neurotypical peers because then they're not exposed
exactly.
To, they're
because it's again, like with the theory of mind, it's a two-way process. How can neurotypical peers of autistic children ever learn to involve autistic children in, for instance, their games, if autistic children are being sent to special schools all the time?
Right.
Or to separate therapy groups. There too, I think that that there's not only autistic children who would benefit from some social skills training. So why don't we make these groups where every child can join if he or she thinks, well, I could learn something, I could pick up something there. And of course, the knowledge about autism should be there.
Right.
And that's not yet, well, a big success in every mainstream school. I know that. But we're making progress. So actually, I'm quite positive.
Good, good. I always thought it was fascinating too with schools, since I did a lot of volunteer work in schools with therapy dogs. And I'd go to the classrooms, the special classrooms, and the things that the kids were taught, which, you know, most of the kids in those classrooms were on the spectrum. The things that they were taught, I thought this stuff should be taught in the other classrooms, and it's not.
Of course.
Things about respecting boundaries, about it was just amazing about you know, reading facial cues and things like that. The other kids need to learn how to do that too.
But I think, you know, to be honest, none of us is born with the social skills we have as adults.
Exactly.
So it's a learning process, and that involves teaching. And why would the teaching be so different? Well, the style maybe can be a little bit different, but the content is not different.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But I tell you, when I would visit a neurotypical classroom, if I didn't show up because, you know, one of my dogs hurt their paw or some reason, you know, okay, fine, move on. Man, it was a big deal if I couldn't come, because that was marked on the calendar. The kids were expecting me. Why didn't you come? I was very upset. I wore this T-shirt. I loved it though. The enthusiasm was always incredible. Well, talk about just as we, you know, work into closing the show, what are you continuing to do in your work in terms of, you know, the advancement of awareness and just your work in general in this field?
Well, there's two things I'm actually doing right now, and one is there's a lot of recent findings about the human brain that could have quite big consequences for some of the strategies that we use for autistic people. And what I'm trying to do is to translate those recent findings about the human brain to autism. For instance, one of the things we've discovered, not we, but scientists have discovered, is that the brain is not working like a computer, which means it doesn't receive information from the senses and then processes it and then reacts. It predicts the sensory inputs. That means that this could have consequences for what we do with autistic children around sensory issues, because it's not just about the stimuli in the environment, it's also much about predictability. That means taking away sounds is not always necessary. It's sometimes just a matter of making things more predictable. If you know, for instance, that's what Temple Grandin wrote in one of her books, that fireworks are sometimes a big issue for autistic children, but not when they know they're going to expect the firework.
Exactly.
And that's also why some autistic children who are known to be hypersensitive to sound make a lot of noise themselves, because the noise is then predictable.
Right.
So that's one area. And the other area, which is the one that I put most energy in right now, is the whole area of happiness in autism. Again, I think that it's time to change the focus from a lack of well-being in autism to how can we promote well-being in autism. Just as an example again, there's now questionnaires and tests to, let's say, diagnose and assess the sensory issues in autism, asking what kind of sounds and lights are difficult for an autistic child. I would make kind of a U-turn, and I would like to, and I have developed such a questionnaire. It's named the Good Feeling Questionnaire, and you can find it on my website in 7 or 8 different languages. Rather than asking what kind of stimuli are disturbing or even stressful or even hurtful for an autistic person, we should start asking questions like, what kind of noise do you like? What kind of light do you like? What kind of textures do you like in food, and in what kind of clothes do you like? So I think it's time to take a U-turn and have this more positive approach towards autism. And rather than looking into all the deficits and the problems and the issues, looking at strengths, at interests, at sensory preferences, a more positive approach. That's what I'm really would like to see.
Fantastic. Well, I will be the first one to sign up to read that research, that book, whatever it is it's going to turn into. Tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and your work.
Well, there's two places. There's the website of Autisme Centraal. That's where I work half time. That's in Flemish or Dutch, but there's Google Translate now. But I also have my personal website named Autism in Context. It's very easy to find, my name, and then you do .be at the end for Belgium. And there people can see, amongst others, some of the tools that I developed and that are available for free. But they can also see what I'm currently working at and where I present about those things.
Absolutely. And listeners, you can actually just Google autism in context and the website comes right up. But if you want to go directly there, you can go to www.petervermeulen.be. I highly, highly recommend you visit this website. Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was a real honor. It was a real honor. Yeah, I'm a little shrimp from Belgium, so.
Well, I'm glad we found you. We follow as much as we can out there, and it's been interesting trying to get guests for this show, Converge Autism Radio. Trying to get guests in the summer has been so difficult, for obvious reasons. People are on vacation. So when my assistant said, "Hey, this wonderful man is coming on," I went, "Oh my gosh, in the summer, fantastic." But again, thank you for coming on, and listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Springbrook's Converge Autism Radio.
I know, no one likes commercials, but seriously, folks, without the help from these organizations, we could not stay on the air. Please give a shout out to zencharts.com. If you're a mental health or addiction treatment center, you'll want to use their EHR. It's gorgeous, and they're just good people. And also MyGenetics, MyGenetx.com, because knowing your genetic code empowers your mental health treatment. And lastly, CopeNotes.com. We love getting positive messages right to our phones every day from Johnny Crowder. He's the lead singer of Prison, a heavy metal band sharing their music about suicide prevention, addiction recovery, and mental health. See, that was painless. Support them as they support us. Back to the show.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps. Or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it.
Good boy.